You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and we're going to have a great conversation today focused around data and measurement. And so a lot of this has to do with Amazon. Had a lot of great conversations coming out of Unboxed and the event that Amazon Advertising had in New York City a couple weeks ago. Met some really great people, reconnected with some great partners and friends in the space. And so have one on the podcast today, Sreenath Reddy from IntentWise. We've chatted a bunch in the past, and just, he was open to jumping on the podcast and help educate us as a whole. So, if you want to jump in, a brief intro on yourself and IntentWise, that'd be awesome. And then we can kind of jump into the conversation. Sound good?
Sounds great. Yes. Well, first of all, and thanks for having me. Always great to have deep conversations about this space with you, whether it's at conferences or in sessions like this. So again, thanks for having me. Quick intro about myself. I'm one of the founders here at IntentWise. IntentWise, at the core today, we do two things. One is we provide brands and agencies and aggregators and out-of-the-box data and analytics infrastructure for Amazon and other marketplaces, where we stitch together fragmented, disparate data sets. And our fundamental mission or goal with that is to really shrink that time between data and insight for our clients, right? So that's one component. And what sits on top is a ad optimization platform. So we today help brands with ad optimization on Amazon, Walmart, Instacart, and a number of other retailers through our Criteo partnership. So that's what IntentWise does. And personally, I've been in the performance marketing and analytics space for like almost 2 decades. I used to run performance marketing and data teams at Orbitz, which was an public online travel company prior to starting IntentWise. So let's just say I've had battle scars from all of this that I've learned quite a bit from. So,
yeah, awesome. So, something we chatted about outside, the conference there was around data, the data sources that are coming from everywhere at this point in time. Amazon specifically, launching a ton of new ones. We have Marketing Cloud, we have Data Stream, but there's also then the other side of it, which is not only off Amazon, but, what happens and I wouldn't say like the path to purchase, but what's coming from the retail side as a whole and the data that we're getting there and the conversion. Yeah. But, would love to hear what you see happening in this space as a whole. And maybe we start with some of those data streams.
Totally. And by the way, I don't know, when you say conference, you're referring to Unbox, which was Amazon's marquee advertising conference of the year. Yes, so great to see you there, and lots of exciting stuff coming out of that. But to your question, the way we think about data in the context of Amazon is there is, on one hand, advertising data, and then there is, on the other hand, retail and operations data. And if you look at all the things that have happened, for example, on the advertising side, as we are all aware, Amazon is aggressively pushing and expanding their advertising inventory as well as distribution. And a great example of that is rights to Thursday Night Football, right? And that tied to Prime membership and the same membership that, with which people are buying stuff day to day on Amazon. So they're continuing to expand their ad presence. And with that, they're also rapidly pushing out measurement mechanisms, right? So in fact, measurement and optimization was one of maybe 3 to 4 core themes, I would say, that was pretty prominent at Unbox. But just unpacking that, you've got Amazon released what's called Amazon Attribution some time back, right? That's a product or a tool that can be used to track impact of off-Amazon traffic on Amazon. So, for example, you could be running a Google ad or a Facebook ad or a TikTok ad, and you've got all the metrics from those platforms. But how do you know what that traffic is doing and how is it performing on Amazon? Amazon attribution can help you stitch that together. So that's one. Amazon Marketing Stream, right? They started to talk about this earlier this year. They made a big splash at Cannes, which, by the way, is an interesting move by Amazon. I think they were at Cannes for the first time ever this year. And I think that's a push again more into TV advertising, streaming, and getting in front of those audiences that have been in that universe for a long time. But anyway, so they launched Amazon Marketing Stream at Cannes. And what that is Amazon always published advertising metrics at a daily grain, right, through their console. But Amazon Marketing Stream now gives you data on an hourly basis. And there is two types of data. There is the impressions, clicks, collect traffic, and then conversion data by the hour. So you can actually see conversion rates by the hour, ACOS or ROAS by the hour, right? And you can optimize by the hour.
And then brands are then using that to then, what used to be called, day parting.
Yeah. So
turn it on and off based on, but you can actually do it rather than, prior to this, I know a lot of companies were saying they did it, but if Amazon's only releasing it on a daily basis, it's interesting to see how they'd be able to pull that data. But that is that the essence of it, is now you can see when to have ads on and off?
Yeah. So, I think philosophically, you should never have your ads off, and we can debate that. But I would position it as, when do you bid up and down, right? What are those fluctuations that you can deploy to really maximize efficiency of your spend in a given day, right? And you brought up another interesting point. There has been a lot of chatter and talk about day parting for a long time. And for me personally, what bothered me about that is you could have deployed day parting tactics. An example of that could be, look, bid up between 12 to 2 p.m. because people are shopping from their offices or whatever, right? And then dial back down. Problem was, you never knew if that tactic did well for you or not, because there was no way to measure ad efficiency at an hourly grain. And to your point, Amazon Marketing Stream changes that. And one of the big insights for us from that is we see this pattern where CPCs kind of take a downward trend towards the later half of the day. And I think our thesis on that is people run out of budgets, so there's lesser competition. so CPCs kind of drop. It's a consistent pattern. And we've been out talking to people saying, look,
simple. It's weird how you could read that, though. A lot of times, like, you could look at the data differently, right? Which is, maybe fewer people are out there shopping, but maybe ad budgets have just blown through.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the shopping patterns, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of people there. It's just CPCs are lower. And my big message to everybody there is, guys, like, if you were to keep this really simple, please don't run out of budgets. Either lower your bids or increase your budgets, but don't let competition just walk in at low CPCs, right? But I will say what is super interesting for me on Amazon Marketing Stream is, see, the hourly data is interesting, but the reality for someone like me is I've seen this in Google and Facebook for a very long time, right? If you have just been in the Amazon universe, this is this exciting thing. But if you've been in the ad universe, this is like, that's yet another feature. Like, most other platforms already have it. But what is interesting to me about Amazon Marketing Stream, and it's in its early phases, is this other piece called messaging on an hourly basis. And they have the first use case executed, which is, if a campaign runs out of budget, there's a message that shows up, right, on an hourly basis. Now you can react to it, right? But imagine, and I'm just going to imagine here, that extends to other scenarios, whether that's inventory running out, whether that's, hey, you lost a badge, or like so many of these retail events that could be happening. Imagine being notified of that in almost real time, so you can actually react to it. To me, that is the exciting part of where Amazon Marketing Stream could go. Okay. So we talked about Amazon attribution, Amazon marketing stream, and last but not least, and we can spend a week talking about this.
The marketing cloud?
Yes.
Amazon marketing cloud. Run us through this. What is the marketing cloud? Is it like everything else that's in the cloud where you just say, hey, it's in the cloud, and you're like, oh, it's in the cloud, it must work?
No, good. Important, I think, important question. Everyone in this ecosystem need to just have a pretty decent understanding of this. And can I lay this out, right? So the way we view this, imagine you're a shopper. You saw a DSP ad, right? And then you saw a search ad. And 5 days later, you went and bought. And I saw a sponsored display ad and a sponsored product ad. And then I went and bought. Imagine if you were able to string together the patterns of touches and what that is resulting in for you from a traffic, ad spend, and efficiency perspective, right? That was not possible before. But Amazon Marketing Cloud makes those intricate use cases possible. Here is how. Amazon Marketing Cloud is a data set which is tracking every event that a shopper experiences, an impression, a click, a conversion, and tying it back to was it part of a campaign? Was it not? And the data exists in Amazon Marketing Cloud at a user ID level. Now, I want to be super clear. Privacy is a big concern for Amazon. So it's not like I can go pinpoint, Aaron, what did you do exactly? No, but it's all kind of it's masked data. But what you can do is run aggregates to see, hey, is my DSP campaign spend having an influence on how my sponsored product campaigns perform, right? Because we lived in this world of last touch attribution.
That's where I was thinking was everybody wants the multi-touch attribution tool.
That's right.
They want a true one that covers everything from the direct to consumer side, but on the Amazon platform.
Yep.
That's what this allows is the multi-touch attribution. And
yeah. So you've got data at the finest grain, right? Multi-touch is kind of one bucket of use cases. Hey, should I just give credit to the last touch? Should I give credit to the first touch? Should I share the credit? So I call that, like, there's a number of use cases under multi-touch, but there's more, right? So there is just pure campaign optimization. What frequency of exposure should I set my display campaigns to get the most efficiency? How is performance by different device types, and how could I use that insight in optimizing my campaign? So there's a whole bunch of use cases under what I'd like to call operational efficiency. There's a number of use cases around understanding incrementality. I know incrementality is a big word for all of us in advertising. Like simple example, Amazon Marketing Cloud is the only place to go understand new to brand metrics on sponsored product campaigns. It doesn't exist in the Amazon Ad Console, right? Lifetime value of a customer, like what is a particular customer doing over a long period of time, right? You can understand those. So I simplified and say it is the data on your shoppers at the finest grain, and you can run queries on top of it to execute a whole bunch of sophisticated use cases that was never possible before. Right? That's Amazon Marketing Cloud.
And who's using it today? Right? Is it anybody's available, or do you have to have a connection?
Yeah. And I think so. What's happening today is you get an AMC instance provisioned for you. If you have a reasonable DSP display advertising spend. And I think Amazon is trying to be careful with it because the interface to that tool is what is called structured query language. You have to write SQL to interface with that tool. So it's not everyone's cup of tea. You need to have people internally that know how to write SQL. Now, there is tool providers like ourselves that are simplifying that problem. But at the core, to get the most value out of it, you have to be writing SQL to get at that data. So who's using it A lot of agencies have access to it on behalf of the brands. Some brands have access to it as well. Let's just say I think we're in early stages of evolution around this. And people are trying to figure out what data exists, how to best action on it, what do you do with the team, right? Because if you're at Unboxed, you can clearly see like Amazon Marketing Cloud is the center of Amazon's measurement universe going forward.
Yeah. I mean, what's really interesting to me is kind of hit me at that conference was, a lot of times on the vendor, on the retail side and the seller side, there's nobody to talk to there, right? And over and over again, you have Amazon is fully focused on the customer.
Yeah.
So we as consumers, like shopping on Amazon because Amazon treats us so good. We're there buying something.
Yeah.
At that event, it hit me, all these marketers that are there, right? They're all buying something.
That's right.
That's why Amazon, where people say, oh, I don't have the tools on Seller Central I need or Vendor Central I need. But here on the flip side is a lot of investment going into the advertising side, because now brands in this case, right? The marketers there, they're buying something. And Amazon, I think, is trying to change its view in this space of how lacking they were. Like you were saying, like the data that they're kicking out, like a lot of brands see that from Google all the time. And if you get a traditional paid search and social advertiser coming in and looking at the Amazon, ad platform, like, where's the data at? Like, how am I supposed to work with this? Which is why I have a lot of like traditional paid search and social agencies that don't specialize in Amazon. And the Amazon agencies rarely specialize in traditional paid search and social, as they are so different. But it's clear that Amazon views the marketers as a customer, or just pouring. I mean, I don't know if you took away the same thing, but it seems like Amazon's pouring a lot into that, and it just helps them make more money.
Yeah, and honestly, Aaron, you said a couple of things here that I want to piece together, right? One, the traditional advertisers from the Googles and Facebook haven't really dug into the Amazon world, and the other way is true as well. One of the core aspects to it is that I, having lived in that universe and now in this universe for like long enough time, there's a core fundamental difference that I think results in a lot of this. In Google, what used to happen is you buy an ad, you click on the ad, that shopper lands on your website, and you control the entire experience that you're delivering to that shopper, right? Look at what happens on Amazon. You click on an ad, most likely you're on a brand store or a product detail page, and guess what's happening on that product detail page? Depending on whether you're 1P or 3P, you don't control price. There's all this badging and retail signals that are there that you may not control.
And 5 other ads.
25, 30 other ads, right? And so the point is, the amount of influence retail signals and factors have that you may or may not control on ad performance is something fundamentally different about how advertising works on Amazon, or for that matter, other marketplaces, compared to the traditional way of thinking about ads. And which ties right back to the question you asked me right at the get-go, the need to bridge advertising data and signals with retail and operational data and signals.
Yeah.
And honestly, without that, you really are leaving a lot of money on the table. And frankly, and we talked about this earlier, a big opportunity and gap is this, the gap between ad/media and retail/operations. And it exists from an organizational structure standpoint, and certainly exists at a data level. And I'll end by saying that, yes, all of the vendors and sellers traditionally, like, there's always this feeling of, I don't get enough from the data from Amazon. And I think it still exists to some degree. The change I do see is that Amazon is making more and more and more data accessible via APIs, the seller partner API. I know that this is may not be much of a consolation, but before March 23rd, there was no API access to vendor central retail analytics and sales data, March 23rd of this year.
Right.
Right? Now, is it all of the things that a vendor would want? Not yet. But my sense is that even on the retail and ops side, things are going down a path. There is just more and more data, certainly through APIs, being made accessible. And certainly we are bridging that gap, right, between what Amazon is exposing and what brands and agencies are able to leverage. But that's another trend around data. More and more data around retail and ops is going to become available through APIs.
No, it's interesting because, like you're saying on the Google side, right? Or Facebook, or how we're doing traditional ads, and they drive it to our direct consumer site. And then the operational side, we're fully involved in. And how it converts and everything else is deeply important to brands who have a direct consumer site. And yet, for the longest time, we viewed, as I'm piecing this together, I completely agree with you. People who viewed Amazon as, I'm just going to drive traffic to Amazon, and then inside Amazon, I'm going to I'm going to use PPC ads and just to help convert and pop up, show higher in search. But it's almost like then they forget everything on the back end because Amazon handles it. And there's this fundamental shift that's happening right now where brands are moving away from looking at Amazon as a retailer, because they shouldn't, because Amazon is a platform, right? This is a theme that's come up, I'd say predominantly. I think a lot of people have viewed it that way for years, but over the past year, it's been coming up over and over again is, you view Amazon as a platform that you're going to use to sell your product, not as a retailer, because they're not going to be a partner and they're not a traditional retailer. And if you can view it as, so technically Shopify is a little bit the same way, or BigCommerce, whatever direct consumer site, you upload the stuff to it, you drive traffic to it, and an execution happens, a purchase takes place, and product gets shipped.
Yeah.
Same thing happens on Amazon. Is you're driving traffic to it, you're remarketing on it, and then somebody buys it and it gets shipped. And so I only do that to continue, like, we track all that operational data on our direct consumer site, but I think you're right. We treat it as disconnected data on the Amazon side. And I think that's one of the most intriguing things that I think you've nailed it. Like, I think what you're talking about is key. Is how does it all work? We tie it all together on a direct consumer site and we get it. Why don't we do that on Amazon?
And that's, I think I love your contrast with the direct to consumer side. And like, look, CPCs, as you and I both know, are at a different level than 3 years ago. And I keep saying the low CPC honeymoon is long over, right? So how do you now drive continued efficiency? How do you drive differentiation? And I think one of the key levers, in my opinion, is that the agencies and the brands that are able to bridge those, what I'd like to call silos between media and retail, are the ones that'll do just a whole lot better. And then you compound that with a much deeper understanding on the advertising side with the data that Amazon is exposing through Amazon Marketing Cloud. That trifecta, if you can nail, I think you'll be in an amazing place. I love your kind of contrast with D2C.
Yeah, it's you bring up another point, which is, the cost of customer acquisition is just through the roof at this point in time. And we're at a point now of, we're past like digital 2.0. It's like digital 3.0 or 4.0, where it's not enough to just have the tools out there, right? It's not enough. You have to have a strategy. You can't just have all the silos. You have to operate completely at a different level, especially right now, if you're going to win.
Yeah.
In some cases, if you're just going to break even, even if you're not going to win.
Yeah.
Right? Even if you're not going to win, you just want to break even for this season right here that's happening. You have to operate at a different level, and crunching the data is probably one of the biggest parts of it. thoughts on what you're seeing across the, other data sets that are out there? Like, how should people be thinking about holistically looking at data?
Yeah, I think, and you've heard me talk about this in the space a bit, which is there just has to be an emphasis on data strategy, and not just at a theoretical level, but just from an execution standpoint too, right? I will simplify this to basically say, step one, are you collecting the critical information that matters and owning it? I see so many times that I'll have brands that are using some kind of a third-party ad buying platform, and you ask a simple question. So what happens to your data when that contract terminates for whatever reason? Often the answer is, I don't know, right? Own the data. And today, collecting and owning, frankly, from a cost perspective is not crazy, right? Storage costs have always been going down. Processing costs have been going down. So collecting and owning the data, super important. If nothing else, start doing that. Okay.
So really quick. So I'm just thinking a key takeaway. So if you're on any of these ad tech platforms, like when you wrap up listening to this episode of the podcast, right? You hit pause on it and you go email, right, your account rep at whoever it is and say, what happens with the data? I want to own it.
Yes. Okay. Ask that question. And look, if it simply boils down to save it on your drive somewhere, let it be that. But I don't recommend that. There's much better pathways. I'm just emphasizing the point that you should absolutely own your data. All right. And when I say data, I mean advertising data, I mean retail and ops data. You should own your data. That's step one. Step two is, in my view, and this is just making some mental leaps to say, what interesting questions, if answered, will my business be in a better place and I'll make smarter decisions, right? Like maybe it's tying inventory levels and ad spend allocation, or truly understanding item profitability and tying that to how you optimize ads. But just thinking through those, what are your top 5 awesome questions? Okay. And then work backwards from that to say, why doesn't my current data allow me to answer that question? And by whatever means necessary, go answer them. And along the way, I think you'll see a path to formulating what your data strategy should be, which in my mind is kind of really 4 steps. Collect and own your stuff. Have a strategy to stitch together fragmented pieces of data, which is, I'll tell you like a simple question, right? If you have a large portfolio of products, one of the hardest things people have, and I found in this space, is you take a product, let's call it ASIN, Amazon's lingo terminology. Can you get to a view of ad spend, total sales, content quality, reviews, bestseller rank, all that, just quickly, a holistic view of a given product, right? A lot of times the answer is no, right? So collect, stitch together pieces, have a disciplined strategy to have both descriptive analytics, which is just dashboards to understand what's going on. And then the predictive piece is where you may have questions like, hey, what happens to my sales if my ad spend was 0, right? That's the classic incrementality questions. That may need some detailed analysis. And then lastly, how do you operationalize the insights you get from this data into real decisions, whether that's inventory planning decisions, forecasting, or ad optimization? So I think about these 4 layers. And honestly, you can progress at whatever pace makes sense to you, but the key is to be progressing along those layers at any given time, right? But yeah, I'll reiterate, step 1, go own your data first, and then start to think about stitching it together.
Yeah, and maybe it's the chemist in me. Data is it. If you don't have the data and if you don't have robust data, you can't really make the next step of decisions. When people talk all the time right now about testing and learning, testing and learning, testing and learning, testing and learning works when you have data to start and you know what you're testing on, where you can hold certain variables constant while you test and learn. And when it's disparate and it's all over the place, you can't really understand the signals. You can't understand the story that the data's telling you. Now, don't get me wrong. You can make up whatever story you want around data, right? Yeah, you can stitch together data points to tell pretty much any story you want.
Yeah.
But what you want is the actual story that's being told, right? Not the one that you've made up to fit the narrative that you want, upper management to see.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's it. I mean, we're sitting on tons of data and there's tons of data resources. A lot of it is just how do you trim down to the data set that you're going to use?
Yeah.
Right. That's.
Yeah. And I'll just add this for folks that are listening to this conversation. I've just spent way too much time around data in my career to know this. Oftentimes, boil the ocean type projects around data are very risky and dangerous. And it doesn't have to be that way, right? Like I would think about it as pick your 3 questions that you would want to know today. Your first rev of a solution to that problem may be a complete hack, but doing that helps you understand where the risks are and plan your execution in a way that you're not sinking hundreds and thousands of dollars over a 12-month period before you see anything from it. So I would say avoid big boil the ocean data projects.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the other side is don't be afraid to fail. Yeah. Right. Like start doing the only wrong thing to do is to do nothing, is to just sit on it.
Yeah.
And you're not going to nail it perfect the first time. Right. We don't do that. A lot of it takes practice over and over and over again. And you realize you didn't have the right data set. So you go change the data set and you realize it wasn't quite the right data set. But over time, right, you're getting better and better with the data set that you have and your interpretation of the data. And then the end result is better decisions based on the data that you're churning out and the experiments that you're running. Yeah. Are there other new things that are coming out of Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, lots of new ad formats. I think that they'll keep pressing on, right?
So, yeah, like the Thursday Night Football. I'm not sure I'm advising a bunch of people to do the Carnival Cruise Line level of advertising on Thursday Night Football. Maybe at some point in time, the viewership will be there. But I've gotten that question a lot coming out of Unboxed is, should I do Thursday Night Football? Like I saw this up. Should I do Thursday Night Football? You're a massive brand, maybe do it for exposure, but I think they're trending at about half the viewership of when they kicked off this year. I don't have the exact numbers on that, but that one I'm holding my breath on. But
yeah, I think, and I'm not close to the current numbers on that, but my thesis on that is like Amazon does with everything. I mean, whatever exists today is version 1 of the 10th version that they'll figure out a way to crack. And they'll have more data coming through from both the actual game and viewership than ever before. And maybe I sit and think of it as like the ad you see while watching that game may be different from the ad I see while watching
that's what's crazy, game.
Right. So that is the scale that frankly, like if you connect the dots and if you think of the tech and data that's required to do it, they have the pieces together. So to me, I'm super interested in how this evolves, both from a game viewing experience, right? As well as advertising and reach and the precision that in theory, Amazon can enable. And I honestly don't see why that is exactly not where they will go, right? So that's one piece. I will say the one thing I want to add is that one of the new things with sponsored display ads, right, which is there's display advertising, which is DSP, and there's sponsored display, which is a sub-campaign type under sponsored product ads. Now, non-endemic advertisers, so people who don't sell on Amazon, can also advertise through sponsored display. So that's one of the announcements that came out at Unboxed. So I think there'll be more of non-endemic advertisers, participating in Amazon ads, especially as they expand their reach. I think there'll be more and more space for that segment also to come into the Amazon advertising fold. And folks have asked me, hey, does that mean my CPCs will go up and things like that as a seller on Amazon? I do not know the future yet, but in the near time, there's just way too much inventory out there that Amazon wants to tap into. I also don't think it's in Amazon's interest to hurt relevance of the ad from a shopping experience perspective. So in that regard, I don't expect to see the sponsored display slot on a PDP taken by some random, ad that has no relevance. I don't think that'll happen. But who knows what the future holds. But that certainly was one of the other big announcements that came out.
Yeah, I can see a lot of people jumping in and at first being disappointed, because I think, we run into this all the time, just conversations I'm having. People just ramp up their bid on a search term and they still don't get it. They still don't win that. Amazon is they're in the business of making money. Don't get me wrong, but they're also in the business of not only putting the most relevant product, but the most relevant ad is going to lead you to a product you're most likely going to buy. Yeah. And so, yes, if I'm searching hairbrushes, I'm probably not going to get the insurance ad or the Carnival Cruise Lines ad or anything off the side. It's completely disconnected. Yeah. But if I'm searching luggage, it might be a different story. Right? That's
right. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, what's also, I think that's a unique constraint that marketplaces have that Google or Facebook's kind of didn't have, which is true relevance of the ad versus the shopping experience. Google's of the world had to care a lot less about that, right? But on Amazon, in my view, the ad business exists because there is shopping happening, right? And there is probably that fine balance that is, I'm sure they're continuously experimenting with to ultimately not hurt shopping experience. So yeah.
What are you most excited about over the next year or so? And it could be Amazon, it could be off Amazon, it could be.
Yeah. Look, I think if you look at all the moves Amazon is making, it's almost like they're surrounding the customer, right? So, and I always viewed a place like Amazon, they've got three compounding factors that really have helped them put a distance between them and the next big retail media player. And that is the amount of online traffic they get, how often the traffic keeps coming back, and when they show up, how long they spend with Amazon. And you add NFL, you add Twitch, you add Amazon Prime Video. It's just all those things keep growing, which I think is huge. And then I look at non-Amazon retailers, and I always believe that when it comes to online retail media, that gap will continue to stay, right? However, I think what's exciting about, the likes of Walmarts and Targets is Walmart has 5,000 stores, and, I don't know, they have a crazy penetration in terms of families in the US that have visited a Walmart store. So I'm excited about how these traditional physical retailers are going to use stores to drive retail media, physical stores. I'm excited about what Amazon will continue to do from an online perspective. And for me personally, from an intent-wise perspective, I think this is quickly shifting into a data/measurement game. And it wasn't that way in the first 3 years. It was very much about enabling workflows around ads so that people can run their campaigns easily and optimize and all of that. That's still important. But the importance of data and stitching together the fragmented signals has just suddenly skyrocketed. And I, from a personal standpoint, there's a role that I think we can play in the ecosystem, which is enabling data and measurement across these different innovations that these retail media platforms are putting out. And frankly, it fits with our DNA, where I personally came from a background perspective. So we are at that inflection point, and I'm super excited to be part of that,
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you that for a few years, for a while now, like Amazon was just easy money in, money out, money in, money out. When that's good and sales are up year over year, it's great. But just the current state of the economy and a lot more justification being demanded from executive teams on how was the money spent, where was the money spent, what was the return on ad spend, how can we improve it? There's you just dump more money in, you'll get more sales, but I think there's the fine tuning of it, and that means looping in the operational side of it, the retail side of it, and what's working, what's not, and then being able to deliver a robust strategy, I think, is something that executive teams are looking for right now. And quite frankly, the last couple of years, they didn't, right? They're like, I think you nailed it. Operationally, how are we even handling Amazon, right? How do we get the products there? Do we need to differentiate the products? Is it paid media? Do we need an ad tech platform? Who needs to sign off on this? I need to hire 3 more people. And now we're at, hey, how are you going to execute? And you need the data for that.
Totally.
Awesome. Well, my friend, thanks so much. I encourage anybody, reach out, check out IntentWise. They're great friends, partners, supporters of the network. Sreenath, thanks so much for your time today. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Alrighty. Take care, my friend.